Hello, welcome to my channel. Today, we're going to look at 10 amazing facts about the human brain. So, let's get started. Number 10. The human brain weighs about 1.3 to 1.4 kilograms, around 3 pounds. The brain is one of the most important and complex organs in the human body. It is responsible for controlling everything that we do, from our thoughts to our movements to our emotions. But despite its importance, we actually don't know a lot about the brain. We are still learning new things about it all the time. One thing that we do know is that the brain is heavy. On average, an adult brain weighs about 1.3 to 1.4 kilograms, or about 3 pounds. This may not sound like very much, but when you consider that the brain is only 2% of your body weight, it's actually pretty heavy. The average adult brain contains about 86 billion neurons, also known as nerve cells. Each neuron is a tiny cell that is responsible for transmitting information throughout the body. Neurons are incredibly small, but they connect with thousands of other neurons to form trillions of connections. These connections allow us to think, move, feel, and do everything that we need to do to survive. The human brain is the most complex organ in the body. It is responsible for controlling everything that we do, from our thoughts to our movements to our emotions. But despite its importance, we actually don't know a lot about the brain. We are still learning new things about it all the time. One thing that we do know is that the brain is heavy. On average, an adult brain weighs about 1.3 to 1.4 kilograms, or about 3 pounds. This may not sound like very much, but when you consider that the brain is only 2% of your body weight, it's actually pretty heavy. No! 9! Despite being only 2% of body weight, the brain uses about 20% of the body's energy. The brain is one of the most important and complex organs in the human body. It is responsible for controlling everything that we do, from our thoughts to our movements to our emotions. But despite its importance, we actually don't know a lot about the brain. We are still learning new things about it all the time. One thing that we do know is that the brain is a hungry organ. It uses about 20% of the body's energy, even though it makes up only a very small percentage of body weight. This is because the brain is constantly working, even when we're asleep. It needs a lot of energy to stay focused and alert. If we don't give our brains enough energy, we can't think properly and we can't control our movements very well. That's why it's important to eat foods that give us energy, like fruits and vegetables. By eating healthy foods, we can make sure that our brains have the energy they need to stay focused and alert. And this can help us learn and remember things more easily. So next time you sit down to eat, think about giving your brain the energy it needs to stay focused and alert. Eat plenty of fruits and vegetables and watch your brain work its magic. No! 8! Neurons communicate using tiny electrical impulses and chemicals called neurotransmitters. The human brain is one of the most complex and fascinating organs in the human body. It is a network of billions of cells that communicate with each other to control how we think, feel, and act. At the center of this network are neurons, specialized cells that transmit information throughout the body using electrical impulses and chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. Neurons are responsible for everything we do, from the simplest reflex to the most complex thought. They allow us to communicate with the world around us and interact with other people. They also allow us to control our movements and maintain our balance. In order for neurons to do their job, they must communicate with each other. They do this by sending electrical impulses down their long, thin cell body. When an impulse reaches the end of a neuron, it releases chemicals called neurotransmitters. These neurotransmitters travel across a small gap to the next neuron, and then the process starts again. This communication system allows us to think, feel, and act. It also allows us to learn and remember things, but it's not always perfect. Sometimes neurons don't communicate correctly, and this can lead to all sorts of problems, from mental illness to physical disorders. But by understanding how neurons work, we can develop new treatments for these problems. We can also gain a better understanding of what makes us us. So, if you're curious about how your brain works, start by learning about neurons. These tiny cells are responsible for everything we do, and understanding them can help us understand ourselves better. Number 7. Information travels through the brain at speeds of up to 400 kilometers per hour. The human brain is one of the most complex and fascinating organs in the human body. It is responsible for controlling everything we do, from our thoughts and emotions to our movements and reflexes. But did you know that information travels through the brain at speeds of up to 400 kilometers per hour? That's faster than most cars on the highway. Neurons, or nerve cells, are the basic unit of the nervous system, and they are responsible for transmitting information throughout the body. These cells communicate with each other by sending electrical signals that travel along their cell beta, and when these signals reach the end of a neuron, they are released into a tiny gap between neurons and travel to the next neuron, where the process starts again. This allows information to travel from one part of the brain to another in a fraction of a second. For example, when you see a ball flying towards you, information about the ball's movement travels from your eyes to your brain in less than a tenth of a second. Your brain then processes this information and sends signals back to your muscles, telling them how to react. In this case, your brain would send signals to your arms, telling them to raise up to catch the ball before it hits you. This communication between neurons happens all the time, allowing us to interact with our environment and perform complex tasks such as reading, writing, and solving math problems. So next time you're trying to focus on something, remember that information is traveling through your brain at speeds of up to 400 kilometers per hour. Number 6. The brain is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right, which control opposite sides of the body. The human brain is arguably the most complex organ in the human body. It is a walnut-sized structure that weighs about 3 pounds and contains billions of neurons that allow us to think, feel, and act. But did you know that the brain is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right, which control opposite sides of the body? Each hemisphere is responsible for controlling the side of the body opposite to it. So the left hemisphere controls the right side of the body, and the right hemisphere controls the left side. The two hemispheres are connected by a bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum, which allows them to communicate with each other. Each hemisphere is further divided into 4 lobes: the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes. The frontal lobes are responsible for reasoning, planning, and speech. The parietal lobes are responsible for processing sensory information such as touch, temperature, and pain. The temporal lobes are responsible for hearing and memory, while the occipital lobes are responsible for vision. Although the two hemispheres are symmetrical, they are not identical. The right hemisphere is more involved in creative and intuitive tasks, while the left hemisphere is more involved in logical and analytical tasks. For example, the right hemisphere is responsible for recognizing faces, while the left hemisphere is responsible for recognizing objects. Number 5. The cerebrum, the largest part of the brain, is responsible for thinking, memory, senses, and voluntary movement. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain and is responsible for some of the most important functions in the body. It is divided into two hemispheres, the left and the right, which are connected by a thick band of nerve fibers. The cerebrum is responsible for thinking, memory, senses, and voluntary movement. The outer layer of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex, and it is responsible for higher-level functions such as reasoning and planning. The cortex is also responsible for our senses. Our sense of touch, for example, is processed in the parietal lobe of the cortex. The frontal lobe is responsible for reasoning and planning. This allows us to make decisions and take actions based on the information that we receive from our senses. The temporal lobe is responsible for hearing and memory. This allows us to remember past events and use that information to guide our future behavior. The occipital lobe is responsible for vision. This allows us to see and interpret what we see in our environment. The cerebellum is the second largest part of the brain and is responsible for balance, coordination, and fine movements. This allows us to walk, run, and perform other physical tasks. The brainstem is the oldest part of the brain and is responsible for keeping us alive. It controls our heartbeat, breathing, and sleep. Number 4, the cerebellum controls balance, coordination, and fine movements. The cerebellum is the part of the brain that is responsible for balance, coordination, and fine movements. It is located at the back of the brain, below the cerebrum, and above the brainstem. The cerebellum is a wrinkled, fist-sized mass of tissue that is responsible for coordinating the activities of the cerebrum and the spinal cord. It receives information from the cerebrum and the sensory organs and uses this information to coordinate movement. For example, when you decide to walk, your cerebellum will receive information from your eyes, ears, and muscles. It will use this information to coordinate your steps and keep you balanced. The cerebellum also plays a role in fine motor control. This is the ability to make small, precise movements. For example, when you write with a pen, your cerebellum will help you control the movement of your hand and fingers so that you can write neatly. The cerebellum is important for many other functions as well, including speech, attention, and emotion. Damage to the cerebellum can cause a number of problems, including tremors, ataxia, and dysarthria. Tremors are involuntary shaking movements. Ataxia is a loss of coordination. Dysarthria is a disorder of speech. No! 3. The brainstem keeps you alive by controlling breathing, heartbeat, and sleep. The brainstem is the part of the brain that connects to the spinal cord. It is responsible for keeping you alive by controlling basic life functions such as breathing and heartbeat. The brainstem is also involved in other important functions, such as sleep and wakefulness. The brainstem is divided into 3 parts: the midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. The midbrain is the top part of the brainstem. It is involved in functions such as vision, hearing, and motor control. The pons is the middle part of the brainstem. It is involved in functions such as sleep and wakefulness. The medulla oblongata is the bottom part of the brainstem. It is involved in functions such as breathing and heartbeat. The brainstem is important for many other functions as well, such as swallowing and vomiting. Damage to the brainstem can cause serious problems, such as paralysis and death. No. 2. Your brain keeps working when you sleep. It processes memories and clears waste. When you sleep, your brain doesn't shut down. In fact, it continues to work hard to process memories and clear out waste. During sleep, your brain waves slow down and your muscles relax. This allows your brain to focus on important tasks, such as memory, consolidation, and waste clearance. Memory consolidation is the process of transferring short-term memories to long-term storage. This allows you to remember important information for a longer period of time. Waste clearance is the removal of toxic substances from the brain. This helps to keep your brain healthy and functioning properly. There are several ways that your brain clears out waste. One way is through the lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is a network of vessels and tissues that remove waste from your body. Another way that your brain clears out waste is through the cerebrospinal fluid. This is a fluid that circulates through your brain and spinal cord. The cerebrospinal fluid helps to remove waste and protect your brain from injury. Sleeping also gives your brain a chance to repair itself. When you are awake, your brain is constantly exposed to toxins and other harmful substances. This can damage your brain cells and make it difficult for your brain to function properly. But when you sleep, your brain is able to repair itself and protect itself from damage. In general, sleeping is good for your brain. It helps your brain to process memories, clear out waste, and repair itself. So be sure to get enough sleep so that your brain can stay healthy and functioning properly. Number 1. The human brain is about 60% fat. The fattest organ in the human brain is the most complex organ in the human body. It is responsible for controlling everything we do, from our thoughts to our actions to our emotions. But did you know that the brain is also the fattest organ in the body? The brain is about 60% fat, and this fat plays an important role in its function. Fat is often demonized in our culture, but it is essential for our health. Fat provides energy, protects organs, and helps us absorb vitamins. The brain needs a lot of energy to function properly, and fat is an excellent source of this energy. Fat also protects the delicate structures of the brain and spinal cord. This protection is important because damage to the brain and spinal cord can cause serious problems. Finally, fat helps us absorb vitamin D and certain fatty acids that are important for brain health. Despite the importance of fat, many of us consume too much of it. When we consume too much fat, it can lead to health problems such as obesity and heart disease. However, it is also possible to consume too little fat, which can cause problems such as dry skin, hair loss, and difficulty concentrating. Therefore, it is important to find a balance and consume the right amount of fat for our body. Thanks for watching. See you next time!